Welcome back with today's Penny Pinchers. This is a little shocking. A new study finds the #1 issue that couples fight about is money, and it's the second leading cause of divorce. I know my husband and I have been discussing it for like 28 years
Discussing,
now,
I
right?
love that word. That's a good way to put it. We have Brent Petty, a financial advisor with Northwest Capital Management here. Brent, thanks for being in here. You have some tips on how to avoid fights, but this is a tough one. Even bringing up the word money can cause stress in a fight.
Definitely a lightning rod issue.
Yeah, it sure is. So let's start with this one. How do you know when it's time to talk finances with your partner or your spouse?
When you're broke. No,
No, you probably shouldn't wait.
Before that.
Can only go up, right? Hopefully. No, I think the general consensus is you can't start early enough. There are certain things in relationships you do sooner maybe than later, but I think there are stages. You can start having maybe even in the honeymoon stage when a new relationship is blossoming and you're excited about it, is maybe have some 30,000-foot conversations. How did your family, when you were growing up, handle money? Were credit cards used? Was it an issue? Was there one family member, a parent, mom or dad, that handled the finances? Was it shared? You can start having those general conversations as early as a few couple dates and
Did
see
you
if
have
there's
those?
compatibility.
You've been married for like 4 years now.
well, yeah, our 4-year anniversary with Grace and myself is
that
coming
too
up this
personal?
summer. Well, no, but here's what I want to ask. So it just kind of, when we got married, we initially lived in the house that I was living in. So it seemed natural that I just kept being the one that wrote out the check to Clark Public Utilities and wrote out the check for the garbage and all that. But I mean, is that wise, or do you recommend that each spouse kind of gets involved in paying the monthly bills?
It's a great segue. Again, speaking with a broad brush, that when moving in together, and especially with millennials, that can be done as a way to save finance. I'd recommend that you maybe revisit that. Moving in together that's a sign of commitment and not necessarily a financial one, because what can happen is if the relationship doesn't work out and you now have this commitment, financial commitment, it can be very awkward. So maybe stopping a little bit short of moving in together until you both come to that conclusion, no, we would like to take that next step, and then potentially getting into, all right, how do we carve up the responsibilities? Who's going to cover rent? Who's going to cover potentially healthcare and those things, and what are going to be shared?
What do you do when people have really different ideas about money? I always say, we're broke. My husband always says, we're fine. We just look at things differently.
My life lesson is...
I don't know why that's funny.
I find that really funny too for some reason. Okay.
It is funny and to laugh, but it's a serious stress point for a lot of couples.
Yeah.
They do wrestle with this every month. And I subscribe to pay yourself first. And what does that mean is get your financing of your retirement plans, your short-term vacations, and all those things done at the first of the month. And then what's left over, you can have a little less stress to enjoy. And I think there's really importance to have balance between your long, short-term education saving goals and enjoying now.
You have some steps we're going to go through. The first one is to make a money date. So what does that mean, Brent?
Along this path we're talking about is usually, historically, in my experience, money was handled by one person in the couple. And sometimes that can be a stressor and antagonist on itself. And maybe sharing that. Sometimes you'll come to the conclusion is, no, this is going to be handled by someone, but that needs to be, agreed upon. And there are tips and tricks on how to share that. And normally, I think historically, you've handled your money by, I'm going to go to the office, sit there, and handle our finances. And that could be kind of a reclusive event and not something that's enjoyable. Whereas if you go to a local cafe, get on a public Wi-Fi, obviously with security in place, and talk about your finances and talk about how we're spending money, whatnot. And to be frank, establish a budget. There's a great tip that I really like that I came across a little bit ago about writing letters to yourself.
Yeah, I see that tip.
And I think that can be really helpful. It's one thing to have a verbal conversation, but we're all going 100 miles an hour and you forget. But when you take 5, 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes to pen out or write out a letter to your significant other, this is what's important to me, short-term, long-term, and why. It's helpful for that other partner on the other side of that to hear that and digest that, and then you can come together with a budget that maybe meets your partners and your fears, expectations, goals down the road.
Brent, you have some really great websites and some apps too. I want you to talk through a couple of those we're going to put up on the screen here. Honeydew app, the Better Halves app, Anydo.com and ourgroceries.com as well. So talk to us about why
Yeah,
you
the
like
Honeydew
these.
app. That makes it sound like I'm going to be mowing the yard.
I love that. That's a way to save money. Have Rod do it.
And that's exactly what this does.
Is it? Okay.
It helps you
Really?
split out the household responsibilities and shopping, picking up groceries, doing the yard work, and really just helping each other track those things so it doesn't become a burden and people forgetting those items. It's a really handy app.
I still feel like more would end up on my plate at the
That's
end of
the
the day.
goal.
All right, Brent Petty, Northwest Capital Management, thank you for being here. Some great tips, good websites. And again, we'll put those up so you can see those later in the segment for those websites. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.